We're going to now do long division with two polynomials. So here's our first example. We want to take this cubic polynomial and divide it with the x minus 2. So the x minus 2 is going to go out in front, and then your numerator goes underneath. Be careful that you have all your placeholders from the highest term down to the lowest. So we have an x cubed, an x squared, an x, and a constant. We have all the places, so we're good to go. So now I start by saying, how many times does x divide into 6x cubed? And I have my students off to the side figure that out. So I say 6x cubed divided by x. How many times does that go into it? So you're dividing it. And so we're going to reduce this by an x. So now I have an x squared. So it is 6x squared times. So that's what's going to go up on top above the x squared term. Now what you do is you multiply 6x squared to both pieces in front. So let's start with the first one. 6x squared times negative 2 is negative 12x squared. Then I multiply 6x squared times x, and I get 6x cubed. I'm going to put a line over it, and this is where students make mistakes. If you remember in long division at elementary school, you always subtract. You're subtracting through the entire thing. I'm going to change the sign to subtraction here. I'm going to change this now to a plus, because a negative and negative turns that to a plus. Now let's simplify. 6x cubed minus 6x cubed is 0. Negative 19x squared plus 12x squared. So I'm taking care of this, and I get negative 7x squared. Now I'm going to bring down the next term, positive 16x. All right, I'm just going to clean up a little bit here. I'm just going to get rid of that 0, get rid of those arrows. All right, now I say how many times does x divide into negative 7x squared? So off to the side. Just so you have to do it in your brain. Just take your time, don't make mistakes. Negative 7x squared divided by x. What am I left with? So I'm going to reduce this by an x. So I'm left with negative 7x. That's what's going to go up on top. Now we multiply again. We take 7x times negative 2, and we get negative 14x. And I take 7x times x. Oops, I forgot the negative here. See that? Should be a negative here. Negative 7x. All right, so multiply negative 7x times negative 2 is positive 14x. And then negative 7x times x is negative 7x squared. Put the line underneath it, and here's where you have to be careful. Change the sign of that green piece. So this now becomes a plus 7x squared. And now that becomes now a negative 14x. All right, so now negative 7x squared plus 7x squared is 0, so I'm just going to cross it out. And then 16x minus 14x is 2x. Bring down that last term, minus 4. All right, how many times does x divide into 2x? So off to the side, 2x divided by x. The x's cancel, so you're left with 2. So that's going to go up on top. I'm just going to clean up my arrows here. All right. Now let's multiply. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. 2 times x is 2x. The line underneath it, I'm going to change the signs. You change all the way through. So this now becomes a negative, and that now becomes a positive. So now, 2x minus 2x is 0. Negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Remainder is 0. So your answer is this right here. 6x squared minus 7x plus 2 is your answer. All right, that was the first time you saw log division with polynomials. So this might go a little bit faster for you now. So make sure you have your placeholders, x cubed, x squared, x and constant, which we do. Now we're set to do our dividing. So we say, how many times does 4x divide into 4x cubed? So off to the side, 4x cubed, divide by 4x. In this case, the 4's cancel. You can cancel by an x, or left with x squared. So x squared goes up on top. All right, now let's start our multiplying. We multiplied everything in front. So x times 5 is positive 5x squared. X squared times 4x is positive 4x cubed. So erase those arrows. And now we have to change the sign. So now this becomes a negative, and this becomes a negative. So now 4x cubed minus 4x cubed cancels out. Negative 7x squared minus 5x squared is negative 12x squared. Bring down the next term, minus 11x. Now we say, how many times does 4x divide into negative 12x squared? So off to the side, negative 12x squared divided by 4x. So I'm going to reduce that fraction by negative 4, so I'm left with negative 3. I'm going to divide that fraction by an x, so now I'm left with an x. So what's going to go up on top then is negative 3x. All right, so now we're going to start multiplying. Negative 3x times 5 is negative 15x. Negative 3x times 4x is negative 12x squared. Now we need to change the signs. So the first one is now going to become a positive 12x squared, and negative 15x is going to become a positive 15x. Clean up, negative 12x and 12x cancel. Negative 11x plus 15x is 4x. Bring down our last term, plus 5. All right, last one. How many times does 4x divide into 4x? 4x divided by 4x is 1. That's what's going to go up on top. Multiply it. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 4x is 4x. Change your signs. Minus, minus, and you're left with 0. So no remainder. So your answer then is this right here. X squared minus 3x plus 1. This is your answer.